Hey guys, hey Las Vegas. I am Rhino, Julie, the owner of the Camp Rhino Gyms in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I am so fortunate to have Coach Adrian, our running expert, here with me today. And we're going to talk about how to help you run without pain, how to run further, faster, and do it all without pain. And I don't know about you guys, but I remember the day I became a runner. And I remember trying to run further and further and getting more and more excited about it. Like running is one of those things where you can just see your progress so fast and it gets so cool and it gets so fun. And then all of a sudden, like my knee started to hurt. That was the first pain I'd ever had. And I remember asking people about it, and nobody really had anything that I could use as far as help for that. I definitely wasn't told the things that Coach Adrian was about to tell us today. And I just kind of had to stop running, and then it kind of magically got better and I ran again, but there's always this fear in the back of my mind. And then the next thing that happened for me was plantar fasciitis. I've never had shin splints, but the plantar fasciitis, I literally thought my foot was broken. I was like, what is this? And it's fixable. So that's the thing about these running issues, is they seem to be largely fixable. And even if you don't have pain while running, you still want to run further, faster, and you still want to be able to run when you're 80 or 100. And that's what you're going to help us do today, right, Coach Adrian?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
That is the goal.
That is the goal. So just to give you guys an introduction of who Coach Adrian is, like he is going to give us some tips today. He is going to tell us, hey, do this, this, and this, like to help us. So I'm so excited to hear that. But I just want to tell you like who he is. He's a former U.S. Naval officer and health and fitness professional. He works at Camp Rhino. He moved here and we scooped him up before any of the other gyms could. We were so happy. He holds a master's degree in kinesiology, and he's certified through several top organizations, including the National Strength and Conditioning Association, the USA Triathlon, and Precision Nutrition. But here's the cool thing. He has completed several marathons and Ironman distance triathlons. Okay, so we have the real deal here in front of us. And, if there's one way I could describe Adrian, besides just being the nicest guy ever, and it's like going to grandma's house and eating apple pie when you talk to him, besides that, he has all the tricks. So many tricks. I've taken all of these online like Zoom classes and stuff from him, and he just gives you tricks and you're like, wow, it's like magic. He's magic. Okay. So as a side note, I am crazy excited about your new running program, and I know we're going to talk about that as well as the tips today. And but the thing that I'm most excited about is you already launched one this year. So you had your first launch, and
Yep.
I heard about it from everybody. Like I just heard about how people were just like, well, I never thought that I could run, that fast at my age. Like just all of these people just saying how cool it was. And so congratulations on your success with your first one.
Mm-hmm.
And then we all begged you to launch another one. And so you're launching one soon. And I just want to hear for myself and for everybody else, how is this running program different from the other running programs that maybe we've seen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'll get into that in just one second, but I think it's pretty important that you mentioned your experience with running and the trials and tribulations that you have been through. So I'm going to share mine real quick, if that's okay with you.
Please, yes.
Yeah. So my experience with running started like very similar to yours. So I got, as far as the injuries and that kind of stuff goes. So I started really like distance running back in college in like 2008, 2009. And really didn't have any issues. Honestly, like I didn't really know what I was doing too much. I was just running, I didn't have any specific program. And I was like, okay, one day I'm going to train for the Chicago Marathon. And so did my first one in 2008 and then followed it up in 2009. And once again, just running how I felt like it and learning from the experience. So a couple years after that, I started triathlons, and then all that time really, I guess it caught up to me. And this one day I remember it very specifically. I was doing just a regular conditioning workout with some kettlebells, some lunges, and that kind of stuff. And I went for a cool down run. And what do you know, my knees started to hurt. That's when, right? It's always the knees. Yeah. So, yeah, so that's when it started, and it just got worse from there, to be honest. Like, the pain didn't go away. I didn't know what was going on. So, as most people do, I laid off of it for a while. I got weaker, it got worse, and it just kept going and going from there. So, over my time, over the next few years after that, I saw a bunch of different physical therapists with different approaches. I read so many different books, so many different running methods and routines and skills and drills and all this stuff. And that experience really shaped everything, for me. And I was able to, when training for my first Ironman several years later, I really started getting into pose running technique. Mm-hmm. And this is basically where your foot strike is towards the forefoot instead of your heel. And I thought I had it all figured out. I was progressing gradually. And what do you know? After like a couple months of training, I started getting foot and calf issues and all this stuff. And I was like, I'm not going to finish this. This is the worst day of my life. Like, what am I going to do? Like, I put all my heart and soul into this. And then I just started trying other things. I started doing more strength training type exercises, specifically to strengthen certain muscles and joints. And also, once again, modifying my technique from a forefoot strike to more of a midfoot strike. And what happened was, ultimately I figured out the right stride for me at any particular situation in any place and time on any terrain. And I figured it out, and that's when things really started going, really, really well for me. I finished those couple Ironman races a couple years apart. In between those, I did a lot more running and endurance training and other races like Ragnar races, trail running, all sorts of stuff. And when I first got injured, I was like, I don't enjoy running anymore. This is not enjoyable. And even when I switched to pose running, I'm like, this still kind of feels weird. And I wasn't enjoying it. I was dreading going outside every day. And then once I made the final modification, and I'm like, okay, there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach, then I really started enjoying myself again. And now running, I've been fine. The injuries still kind of creep back a little bit, but they're chronic. So if I stop stretching, if I stop doing certain strengthening exercises, then they'll creep back. But once I start to notice them, that is when I start picking up the stuff again. Maybe the frequency gets a little bit more for the strength training and stretching. And it's just a constant move the needle, balance it out thing. So so that's my experience there, and kind of shaped why I want to help so many people with their running, and I want to share my experiences with them. And this running program is one of those ways that I can do it. So going back to your original question, which was, what is the particular program about? How is it different?
Yeah, how is it different? Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times when we're listening to someone talk, we're like, oh, we've probably done that before. We've probably tried that before. And just, how is this program different? And I'm so glad you shared your story. I should have asked. I just thought you were always awesome.
No. I've been through my fair share of the suck, I guess.
That's why I shared my story. I was like, well, I have to, let them know that. Yeah, I love that. That's it's obvious to me now why you built this program and what drives you. And you built this program. So how is it different?
Yeah, so many people that start a running program, in my experience has been like a couch to 5K, or they just get out there and they try to run, and then inevitably at some points they hit a wall, or they get injured, or it's just not enjoyable, or they're like, it's just too hard. I'm breathing too hard. I feel awful when I'm doing it. And the people that get programs online, they're just pretty much like I've seen a lot of them. They're just cookie cutter programs, gradual volume progression, with running miles, with time, whatever it may be. But there's really no structure besides what's called progressive overload, where you gradually increase volume or you gradually increase running time. That's all they're based on. So my program is 12 weeks divided up into 3 phases, which is a periodized approach. So this is called periodization, where you have 4-week phases that focus on something specific for those 4 weeks before transitioning to the next phase. So, and guess what phase 1 is? Skill work. Skill work. So many people do not realize that running indeed is a skill. It's not something you could just go out and do if you're sitting and the majority of your day and have a desk job and you're all tight, you're all stiff, and then you go out there and you try to run, heel striking, whatever it may be, without any sort of skill and foundational background. So running is a skill. It's different from walking, and it needs to be trained. So that's why the first 4 weeks is the majority skill work, a lot of strength training for specific muscles, foot, core, hip, that kind of stuff. And then it kind of builds and layers upon that. So in phase 2, of course, we still do skills. However, they're backed off a little bit for a little bit more running volume, so we can get that extra running time in during that hour session. And then in phase 3, you take all that running volume, all that aerobic endurance you've developed in the last couple phases, and you start laying your intensity on it. So, and it takes 8 weeks to get to that point. We're not going to be doing really, really high intensity stuff until you're ready for it. So that is what the last 4 weeks are all about. That's where you increase your top end speed. That's where you really make your gains. But the foundation needs to take place before that. So
this is how
the difference there.
This is how we do this is how we do our personal training programs.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow with running, you're right. We just go out and we just run more and more and more and more. And technically we can just go out and start running, but all of us hit the wall of knee issues and, or something happens. Hips, you name it. You see people running and they look like they're in pain more often. Like whenever I see people running, I don't see, honestly, people with just these smiles on their faces and they're just like gazelles. I see people and I'm like, oh, I can spot pain because I felt it myself. And so it's so smart to build the foundation and the skills first, just like we do with our personal training clients and the periodization program. So smart to take that and combine that. And that is indeed new. That is indeed different than what I've heard other people doing. So congratulations on that. That is awesome.
Thank you.
And and my next question was, is it true that your program can help me run further, faster, with less pain?
Absolutely, and for all the reasons I have just listed. So the periodized approach, the building the foundation before. So I teach everybody the full spectrum. So this is in regards to foot strike and different running strides. So if you were to look at this end of the spectrum right here, which is as you would walk with a heel strike, which is a normal walking gait. And at this end of the spectrum, you are running with a forefoot strike. There needs to be something in between. So the vast majority of people that I see run are on this end of the spectrum. They run like they walk, they're heel striking way out in front of them, and that is a lot of force being put back up into their legs, into their joints, and eventually reps accumulate and they start feeling pain. And also it's important to know that every time you land further out in front of your body, that is a braking force, right? So the further you land out in front of your body, it's like taking one step backwards, all right? So if you take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, you're really slowing yourself down. And so if you think about what happens if you're trying to slow down on a downhill, what do you typically do? Put your foot out in front of you. So if you're doing that on a flat, then you're essentially slowing yourself down with every foot strike.
Which is why my
So
knees hurt more going downhill
yeah,
too.
that, and also there's a lot more. You're exerting a lot more force to slow yourself down, just like you're absorbing more, and you have gravity working going against you downhill a lot more too. So just like double that force going back up into your legs. So yeah,
Yeah.
downhill is definitely a lot more strenuous. So and some people will be on this end of the spectrum where they're forefoot striking, but there could be still room for improvement. For the vast majority of people, I'm going to teach them how to forefoot strike. And then once they have that down, we're going to bring it in. We're gonna put you in the middle of the spectrum with a midfoot strike, get you used to that. So now you've developed the entire spectrum of where your foot could strike. And at any point in time during your run, that may call for a different foot strike. So it's not one or the other usually. You got to be comfortable with all of them. So
I love it. And we're also going to give some tips at the end of this interview. So for those of you that are like, I can't join a running program right now, but I want to know how to run further, faster without pain, I'm going to extract his best tips from him. So can you tell me about the last program? Like, just tell me about somebody who did it. Like, I have some people in mind who were just bragging about you, but just tell me about their progress, where they started, and what results you were able to get them.
yeah, absolutely. One person comes to mind in particular from Camp Rhino Northwest. So she is, we should maybe be paying her for how often she's at the gym.
Yeah.
So she knows who she is. But yeah, so
She's
she's
our
been
doctor,
working.
right? Our doctor.
What's that? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So she's been working with personal training for a long time. Basically, since the time I started working at Camp Rhino at the beginning of the year. And oh my God, like her consistency is just crazy. Like that she is the poster child for what happens when you are consistent constantly and you are, got your mindset on making change. So she started with some personal training, and then I talked to her about the running program a little bit more, and she told me about all her aches and pains that she was having, how much she hated running. And I'm like, well, let's give it a shot here. So I have the solution for you. And we went through the progression. She missed one session the entire time. Oh, and by the way, that particular session she made up on her own. So she hit 100% of the sessions. Yeah, and she dropped her mile time from the beginning to end by 1 minute and 25 seconds. And that second test, that test out, that was also in like 30-mile-per-hour winds. So we got there to the park at the beginning of the session. We're all like fingers crossed. Oh, please, God, don't let it be windy. Of course it was. So I told her, okay, like the weather is one of those things that's completely out of control, and it will tear you down if you let it. So let it be. Adjust your pace a little bit going into the wind so you're not completely trashing yourself, and then you got nothing left going with the tailwind. So we formulated a strategy there, and she ran a super fast time and dropped her mile time there. And also during that time, she developed her running technique and is no longer running in pain. She's still running to this day, and loving it.
So she loves running now?
That is the goal, that is the goal. Like, I hate it when people say, I hate running. It sucks so much. Like, I'm just like, oh, come on, just.
Running can be your friend.
It can be, yeah, and it's a way to get away, from all the stresses of normal life too. Just get away, let all the thoughts go, put in some music, or even listen to the sounds of nature or whatever. Get out on the trails. So the psychological benefits are amazing too, if you're not just thinking to yourself how much this sucks. So
yes.
Yeah.
If you're able to not have pain. And for a lot of us, it's not, I mean, I'm still competitive when there's the right person in the room with me and the right music, right? But for the most part, me running now, it really is more for meditation and personal healing. And if you become addicted to running and then all of a sudden you're in pain and you can't, then that's terrible. So you can fix that.
Yeah.
But if someone,
it's kind of the other end of the spectrum. So yeah.
But if someone hates running, it could just be a result of them not, learning how to do it without pain yet. And then you'll help them
Could
with
be.
that.
Yep. And there's so many other different factors there that can contribite to that hatred.
Yes. And she was already exercising for a long time before you did that first mile test. So that's an important distinction too, because like when I first ran my first mile and I had never really exercised except in PE and then ran it, again, like the results were a lot bigger. But she was already in shape. So a minute and a half shaved off of a mile when you're already in pretty good shape is a super huge deal. So that is amazing. And let me, like, how do I ask this question? I want to kind of know, people have tried a lot of different programs. What is really to blame, like, for someone still, like, being in pain when they run or still not being able to improve? Like, it's not their fault. Like, there's some external factor.
So it's not an easy question to answer. However, in my opinion, it's just a lack of guidance and just really not knowing. Not knowing proper running biomechanics, how the legs and body are supposed to move during running. But just like not being exposed to any of that stuff, not having some person who was experienced teaching them that stuff. So, which is no fault of them. Maybe they haven't been exposed to anything like that. Maybe they think that all the cookie cutter programs online that they can find are all the same, which they pretty much are. And but guidance, in my opinion, is the biggest thing. So. There's information out there, but if you don't know how to decipher it or you don't have the exercise science background to make sense out of it, then that could be an issue. Also, certain muscle weaknesses, for instance, core musculature or hip musculature, or weakness in the foot or the muscles that go around the ankle, which they may not even know is an issue. Those are big contributing factors as well. So you might be you might be familiar with a term called overpronation. So everybody, that's when you land on your foot, and so say this is your pinky toe right here. Everybody naturally supinates when they run, so they naturally run like this land on the outside of their foot, and then they naturally pronate in like this. So it's actually natural for everybody to do. That's how forces are dispersed. So that's how you absorb the forces, by pronating like that. But when you don't have the muscular strength in the muscles that control that motion, then that will cause undue stress to those muscles and tendons that are responsible for this motion, and then that's where people get a lot of issues as well. So it could be an issue of muscular strength and balance as well. So that's why I preach personal training all the time, is because I look for those things one-on-one. What are the specific muscle imbalances or weaknesses that you might have too? So the program really hits on the most common muscle weaknesses there. So.
Got it. And you have online versions as well. This particular one is in person and it's in Las Vegas. However, you are an online coach and you do offer this program online as well. So just in case someone's not in Las Vegas and they're like, oh, I want to join. That sounds amazing and I can't. But also I had very well-meaning cross-country and track coaches, and love them for, wouldn't change a thing. Like they absolutely helped me change my life. But people who are part-time coaches, they have full-time jobs and then they're part-time coaches, like they just don't have the time to put in the research and, to just have all the resources that like you have available to you as a full-time, you have your master's in kinesiology, like you're constantly, like in our last interview, you said like what drives you to keep learning is that you'd just be sad if you weren't learning, basically. I mean,
very sad.
I mean, that wasn't exactly what you said, but you're always learning and you have the time because this is your one major focus. So I absolutely loved that. What's the last day to register for your upcoming program, the one that's coming up this year, and then you'll have one next year?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's next Friday.
Okay.
End of day, so 11:59 p.m.
September 20.
And that is the 18th.
Oh, September 18th.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
September 18th. Okay.
Yeah. So the program starts the Monday after. So I want to give the weekend to. I create a Facebook group for everybody, so I can post the workouts there ahead of time, and everybody can chat and share resources and that kind of stuff. So
And ask you questions.
Yeah, exactly. So there's some bonus stuff in there too. So
the insiders.
What's that?
The insiders group.
Oh yeah.
You know, I've paid for things just to be in the Facebook group before.
Oh yeah.
Don't want to be left out.
You got to be part of the group, the Facebook group.
Yes. I love it. And then if they don't join your group program, if it's just not the right time, they can follow your free advice that we're going to give at the end of this, or they can do one-on-one, online, or in person with you as well. So this program is only offered a couple times a year, and it's an amazing deal. And to my knowledge, you came up with it because for someone to work with you one-on-one in this fashion and follow this running periodization, it was like $2,700 for 12 weeks, which is a steal because for the rest of your life, you have these tools. And anybody who's a lifetime runner just knows that mental suffering that comes with having pain from the sport that you love so much. And usually, you know, runners, like all of us runners, we don't stop. Like we get the runner's high that you know makes us like just not even feel the pain anymore. I used to think the runner's
high is great.
I used to think it was a myth because I used to hate running. But then it's a real thing. But anyways, this program, so you have your 12-week running progression split into 3 phases. And normally the one-on-one would be $2,700, which is totally understandable. And you built this so that we can do the group and just make it cheaper for everyone, which is super awesome. And I'm looking at it, and it looks like everybody gets all of that. They get the Facebook group, they get the programming, they do get access to you, which is super awesome of you. And they get it for only $200 a month, so $600 for the entire program. And that's 3 times a week that you're meeting in person
3 times a week.
for these runs. And how cool is like the group all starting from you're all starting together and progressing together. I think that's another cool thing because a lot of running clubs, you jump in and a lot of people have been running forever. Some are beginners, and this is great because everyone's just starting with the foundation, no matter how good of a runner they are.
Yeah, absolutely. Like everybody is different running and fitness background. So I have one person signed up right now who's a very experienced obstacle course racer, and he's been doing that for years, and he's like super fit. So, you know, the volume isn't going to be an issue for him, and we could always adjust that for him to make it more challenging. But either way, it's going to be challenging because now you're focusing more on running technique, which is a challenge of its own. You know, so many people aren't even exposed to that, like ever. You know, never think about it. So. And then you have other people who are just starting out and want to, you know, just run without pain. And that's fantastic that everybody is progressed in the same way. We could always give you more or less depending on how you respond. And yeah, it's just a great time for everybody.
And because the spots, like you don't just have 100 people in this program. It's super duper small. It's a small group program, and you do have a few spots left. And what's nice about that is everybody does get your feedback, which sounds like that was what was mainly missing from people who just haven't been able to figure out how to run without pain. They don't have a coach watching them and giving them that on the spot feedback. So you'll be there and you'll be able to give everyone feedback and keep working with every single person.
Absolutely. In the program. Yeah. One thing I forgot to mention too is running technique analysis, of course. So I do video technique analysis for everybody before and a few times during to see how they're doing, and then after, of course. So
we need errands.
I made that video, the side by side one.
Yes, you need to send that to me, and I'll add it to this.
Yeah, well.
That would be awesome. Okay, so guys, grab your spot because they're definitely going to be gone, especially after making this video. And hey, let's help everyone watching. So everyone watching, you guys can keep just running through your pain and end up just running slower and slower and slower until you just can't run anymore.
I hope not. I hope at some point you'll reach out to me. Like, even if you can't do the program, reach out to me. I'll answer some questions. So send me an email or something.
Giving them choices so you can just do that, or you can listen to the free tips right now.
Yeah.
And follow. So we were that was like the worst option, right? And
yeah. I'm like, man, I don't want anybody to do that.
I don't want anyone to do that either, me included. Or they can watch the free tips that you're about to give them here, or they can join your program and let you guide them so they don't even have to think about it. That's the coolest part about courses is you just submit yourself to whatever's going on. So we're going to have the link for you guys to schedule with Adrian, and that's the best way to get involved. You can also like direct message him. But because there's so few spots, we're not like, you could just directly reach out to him and get your spot since there's so few left. And then he can put you on a wait list or, give you other options just in case the spots are gone. Okay, it is tip time. Adrian, what is the number one thing that somebody can start doing today to move further, faster without pain?
Further, faster without pain. Okay, so the number one thing would be foot strike. Most definitely foot strike. Just start becoming more aware of where your foot is landing on front of your body. So just go out, do a 30-second run. Or even better yet, set up a video camera to the side, and make sure you could get your whole body in the shot and just run past it and make sure you could get a few strides in the frame and see where your foot is landing. If it's way, way out in front of you, which is extremely common, all you got to do is you don't even have to land on your forefoot. You could still land on your heel, but it's more of a midfoot strike. You could just bring your foot strike more underneath your hips instead of way out in front of you. So that is the easiest way. And along with that, probably tip number 2 would be run-walk method.
Okay.
So, and with the run-walk method, just start. It's hard for me to recommend any point in any like running time or distance, but start off with maybe like 10 minutes of total running time, where you like run for a minute and then you walk for a minute, just a 1-to-1 work to rest ratio like that, just so you could give your body some recovery time and just focus on that foot strike, focus on that technique. Right, and go to your comfort level. Whenever you feel like stopping, stop. But that's just one very easy thing you could do. Just pay attention to where your foot is striking, out in front of you, or is it beneath you?
Okay, and what if someone is having knee pain? And so, okay, I have knee pain. I'm going to go pay attention to my foot strike. Is there anything like else, any additional exercises that you recommend supplementing their running with? Or how would they know? Like, let's say someone is just running. Like, what should they be doing to supplement those muscles? Like, what types of exercises should be added to their routines?
Yeah, so my favorite exercise and one I've had a lot of good experience with people, and what I find really, really helps because it mimics the running form, the running technique, and it also activates and challenges a certain muscle group that is very, very commonly weak in a lot of runners, which is the gluteus medius muscle and the gluteus minimus, which is on the side of the hip. So this exercise is called the Captain Morgan, because when you do it, you kind of look like Captain Morgan, so he's got one foot up on the, I don't know, is it a whiskey barrel? I don't even know. But anyway, so you line yourself up. If this is the wall right here, you line yourself up, stand right next to it. You get into your finest like running form with your arms at your sides. You bend your knee a little bit. That's your stance leg. And what you do is you want to drive and press your heel down into the ground while you lift the other leg up, in kind of like a 45-degree knee bend, and you press that knee gently into the wall. So what that's going to do is it's going to press you away from the wall and kind of force you to dip your hip away from the wall. And what you want to do is resist that dip and stay upright. Okay. So you're not going like this, your whole body is staying upright, and that's going to activate that muscle group and really challenge it a lot. So it's not going to take very long before you start feeling the burn in that muscle. So that is like one of my favorite go-to exercises. And start with 30 seconds per leg, 2 to 3 sets before you go out for a run and see what happens. And so you may be pleasantly surprised. And if 30 seconds isn't very challenging for you, go to 45 seconds or 1 minute. Same thing, 2 or 3 sets. And see how it goes.
You know, I'm going to ask you to put a video of this together for me, and I'll send it to anybody who wants it. We'll add a link or something to get that emailed video, because I need the visual. That is amazing. Thank you so much. And so, is that a stretch or is that an exercise? I mean, stretching is exercise, I suppose.
Yeah, that is a muscular endurance, muscular activation exercise.
Okay.
Yeah. So stretches, I got a whole slew of them you could do, but I'm sorry, I'm not in a position to demonstrate them right now. But yeah,
don't even worry about it. No, we're gonna add videos later, and we'll give people follow up and more content, and it will be great. So I remember, and it could have just been, I mean, who knows, like what's true or not true, right? But I remember something about my knees hurting because I was quad dominant or something like that. Are there muscles that runners end up using more than other muscles, and so you really do need to try to have a routine that kind of balances out those muscles, or is that just something that's made up that isn't even real?
Yeah, one thing that's really, really common actually is weakness in your glutes. Okay. So that's not just the gluteus medius, gluteus minimus, it's also gluteus maximus, which is your big butt muscle.
Okay, yeah.
So many of us, especially boot campers and CrossFitters, we do a lot of lunges, we do a lot of squats, we do a lot of just quad dominant work, and don't focus too much. Boot campers focus on this a little bit more with glute bridges and that kind of stuff. But CrossFitters really, need to focus a lot more time on their glutes. So things like glute bridges, hip thrusters, also like high, like box step ups, and even what was it called? Hex bar deadlifts.
Yeah.
So there's been studies showing that muscle activation to the gluteus maximus, the big butt muscle, is pretty high using hex bar deadlifts. So if you have one, that's the one where you actually step into the hex bar and you lift that way. So
we have those at Rhino. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my experience and research and all that stuff, that is the most common muscle imbalance. Along with, there's also a muscle called the posterior tibialis and the flexor digitorum longus, which both control the motion of pronation. So those muscles are in the back of the leg, and they feed down across the ankle and attach themselves to the bottom of the foot. So those muscles are often underworked as well. So when those are not strong enough to control that pronation, you will get tendonitis, posterior tibialis tendonitis, or calf issues, or any other number of issues if those muscles aren't strong too. So I actually just created a video about strengthening those muscles too. So you can share that as well.
So what I'm going to do is, obviously this video is going to go out before we get these extra videos together. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this video on a page, and they can go ahead and just request the information. And as soon as you and I compile the information, we'll get that out there, because I did promise, as many free tips as I could get out of you. And this is blowing my mind. I absolutely love it. And what I would like to help them know is just how often, glute bridges, that's great. I look it up online. I see what the exercise is. How often, so let's say I'm running 3 times a week. How often do I do glute bridges and step ups to make sure that I'm compensating?
So 2 to 3 times a week. Two times a week is really like maintenance. So if you're struggling with pain right now, I would do them 3 times a week. And one variation of the glute bridge that I really really like is, of course, using both legs, but also single leg. So you could just focus on one side at a time and get a little bit more muscle activation out of that. And also using mini bands. They're so cheap. They're like 15 bucks on Amazon. You could get a pack of 4 of them and you could take them everywhere with you. And those are primarily for your outer hip muscles, that gluteus medius I was talking about. So if you add that on top of your glute bridges and force your knees out, because the band's going to pull your knees in, so you got to resist that. And those are the muscles that are working to resist that. That just like compounds the effect of that. So one very easy thing to start off with would be glute bridges, banded, 15 to 20 reps, like 3 to 4 sets. And then you could do that for like a month or a couple weeks, and then gradually kind of wean yourself off a little bit, or just go to like maintenance phase where you're doing it like 2 times a week. So, but my biggest advice would probably be to do that right before running, so you could get those muscles fired up and ready to go.
Yes.
Because
so warm up.
Chances are, right before you're running, what are you doing? Maybe sitting down like we are right now, and the hip flexors are getting all tight, and so that's one muscle group that's really overactive in a lot of people too. They have what's called anterior pelvic tilt, where your hip flexors in the front of your hip are too tight, so they're pulling your hip forward this way, and that creates more of an arch in your lower back. And then what happens is, so if you don't mind, I'm going to keep going here.
Please.
But there are opposing muscle groups in the body. So the hip flexors oppose the action of the gluteus maximus, which is in the back of the hip. So if one muscle group is too tight, the ones that are opposed are going to be quote unquote shut off. They don't really shut off, but their activation is much less. All right. So it what's called inhibits or lessens the action of the opposing muscle group. So that's also really common too. Hip flexors are too tight and glutes are too weak, and that causes a lot of issues too. And one stretch I really, really, really like for that is the couch stretch, which I can also link for that too.
So I've always known that I've always half-assed my warm-ups, and now I really know that.
Right?
What was that?
No pun intended.
I mean, it was no pun intended, but now it's pun intended. So now I realize that if I'm not using glute bridges, right before running or, something like that, then I'm really, really half-assing my warm-ups.
Yep. So make sure you get those in. Yep.
That is so incredibly helpful. Okay, let's talk about, so, it's usually we kind of talked about the hips and the knees. And I mean, even the feet too, but let's talk about shin splints really, really quick. And just an overall advice on what kind of pain, like when should they stop? I think that's so important. Like when should they just stop and do something to fix it instead of push through?
For shin splints specifically?
I mean, I was starting with shin splints, and then I just got this realization that we need to talk about when is too much pushing too, but let's talk about shin splints first.
Yeah. Well, when you are running through pain and it's pain and not just muscle soreness, that is an indicator that you're going too far. I've been through this so many times with myself, and I kick myself in the butt all the time because I am an athlete too, and I know how it goes. In the middle of a run, you're doing so good, you got X amount miles left, just want to push through it, and you're like, oh, I'm not going to stop or call anybody to come get me or walk back home or whatever, so you push through it. However, in the grand scheme of things, you have to focus on your goal. What is the main goal? Is it training for a race, whatever, 2 months from now? If you keep pushing it, when you're in pain, that's going to prolong your recovery time. So it's better to stop when it first comes on. And if it comes on, like I've had runs where like I feel a little bit of pain and stiffness, it comes and then it dissipates, so no big deal. I'm not in pain after the run or anything like that. But there's also those times where it doesn't go away after like a few minutes, after like 5 minutes. Like if it's still not going away, time to stop. Time to stop. Just check your ego. Way easier said than done. I've been guilty of it many, many, many times, and I still to this day am, but I have stopped occasionally.
So stop and reach out to
you. What's that?
Stop and reach out to you. That's what it's
Stop, reach out to me, or go home, do some stretching and glute bridges, and then reach out to me.
Yes, okay. No, and that goes for shin splints, knee pain, hip pain. I've seen and just correct me at any time if I'm wrong, because back when I was a coach, I thought about all of this a lot, but now I'm the gym owner and you all are the experts. And back in the day, I used to tell my boot campers, I used to say, hey, if it's a sharp, sudden pain in the middle of exercise, in the middle of doing something, then definitely just stop, really pay attention to that, give it 24 hours. If it's gone in 24 hours, then great. But I'll never forget one of our boot campers, and she was a coach at the time, and she pulled her hamstring, and I swear it wasn't that big a deal. But she finished boot camp, kept going, wouldn't stop, and it gradually turned into like this year thing. And I see when people just stop immediately when it's something sharp, and all of a sudden, like they're sprinting and something they feel a little pop. Like if they just stop and rest it until it's better, they get better really, really fast. And if they don't rest it, it could be just this terrible process.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the hardest things about being a coach is to ask or tell your athlete to stop. And I hate doing it. I'll be honest with you guys, I hate doing it. I hate seeming like the bad guy in the moment. But it's always for your own good. I always have the best interest of the athlete in mind. And if I'm telling you to stop, it's for a specific reason, and you'll probably thank me down the line. And that's why even coaches need a coach. So, because I know how it is the hardest thing to do, to stop in the middle of a workout. You just want to push it. You got that adrenaline going, and you feel like a failure if you stop. You feel like an absolute failure. There is shame. There is all sorts of, but it goes away. It goes away after a couple hours. You go home, you relax, you recover, and maybe take a day or two, and then you come back. But if you keep pushing it, instead of a day or two, it could be a week or two, or a month or two, or maybe even worse. So I'm not going to say it's easy. It's not, but you just got to keep it in the back of your mind. Suck it up, put that ego aside, and know when to call it a day. Live to fight another day.
Yes. And the difference was to me sharp pain right now versus I'm coming into class sore because I worked out yesterday, and the difference between soreness and that sharp pain. Soreness is maybe something that gets better as you warm it up, and a sharp pain in the middle of activity is just always something to really pay close attention to. Am I on the right track there?
Yeah, absolutely. And not just sharp pain, but of course sharp pain is important, but also it can be just a constant, like a cramp type pain. That's more of a like a cramp or a tendonitis or something like that. So there's multiple different types of pains that you should be paying attention to. But yeah, sharp pain is never really a good thing. So
I also used to ask, and this is just me, bringing it down at a level that we can all respond to. I was like, well, does it hurt on both sides? Like, is it the same on both sides? Because that was always an indicator too. Like, if both quads are sore, okay, cool. But if one has this little cramp in it and the other one doesn't, or, like when there's uneven pain, then it might be something more too. And that could just be Julie's little head in my own little
if it's uneven pain, chances are there's something a little bit more to it. There's some sort of muscle imbalance from one side of the body to the other, or between muscle groups, or what have you. So that requires further investigation, through a one-on-one training and a movement analysis to really get down into what could the problem be, and also some muscle testing to see which muscles are weak and strong and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot that goes into it. So.
And you do all of that.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Yes. Okay. Well, I think this was a lot of helpful tips and tricks and advice. And I think that everybody should definitely ask. If you guys have questions, we'll get on again. Adrian said I can interview him whenever I want. So we'll get on again and we'll answer your questions. And grab one of those spots or just reach out to Adrian if you need help, and hopefully he can help you one-on-one. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Adrian. Much appreciated.
Absolutely, Julie. Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Bye, guys.